Hey everyone, Matron here, bringing you another StarCraft 2 commentary, this time the second game in the best of 3 series between Rigid, spawning as the blue Zerg, and IdrA, spawning as the red Zerg. The map will be Xel'naga Caverns, as that was Rigid's choice. This is third round action from MLG Dallas, the National Championships, where number 4 seed IdrA is taking on number 61 seed Rigid. IdrA was able to cheese a little bit in that first game with some Zergling Baneling play, very well timed on his extractor, his Baneling nest, and his pressure. See, Rigid did throw down the 15 hatch, expecting a little bit more of a macro game from IdrA, as IdrA typically does favor that defensive macro style himself. So IdrA using that strategy in both first games of his 2 series so far we've done in ZVZ. Maybe just taking that cheap win. If it doesn't work, if the player is able to defend it, IdrA is confident enough that he can take the next 2 games straight up. But if he's able to get a cheap win in that first game, then it gives him a little bit of wiggle room. He can lose the second game and still come back in the third and close out the series. So interesting bit of strategy from IdrA here, doing sort of a surprise strategy. And we'll see how Rigid responds this time, perhaps with some early scouting, as we do see a scout coming out before he does any sort of hatchery or pool. We do see the early gas coming out for IdrA again, so he may be going for this Zergling speed and Baneling play once again. Do see the scout of Rigid is going to see the pool and the gas, maybe expecting much the same, and may try to react a little bit differently, getting out some more Zerglings to take on the early forces of IdrA. Rigid could also try to get down a fast Roach Warren. If he's able to beat the timing of IdrA's push, the Roaches could be very good against the Banelings. Both players with their pull down, Rigid getting up his gas a little bit later, so IdrA will be able to tech faster than Rigid, but he is sacrificing a little bit of early economy because he does not have these 3 drones on minerals. Rigid will be able to push ahead in the mineral count. See, IdrA saving up quite a few minerals right now. Looks like he's now dumping them into a Queen as well as Zergling speed. So coming out with 4 Zerglings again. Typically, IdrA does come out just the 2 Zerglings, but again might be going for this Zergling speed and then Baneling play. The Roach Warren coming out very quickly for Rigid, so trying to counter the Baneling play of IdrA with these Roaches. The Roaches can attack from range, try to take down the Banelings before they get close. They also have a lot more HP and are able to take the hits of the Banelings. They're armored units as well, so they don't take the bonus damage that the Banelings do to light. So we do see Zerglings coming across the field for IdrA here. Going to try to come into Rigid's base. Rigid does not have that hatchery down yet. So IdrA has not done much scouting. But now we see 4 Zerglings versus 4 Zerglings plus a Queen, so you're going to be able to focus down using this Queen, and now we see the 5 Zerglings against the 4 from Rigid, but this Queen's able to do so much damage from range. Zerglings of IdrA just taking the grand tour of Rigid's base. He is going to see that Roach Warren, and now 5 Roaches coming out, 6 Roaches coming out for Rigid, so he's going to be very well protected against any sort of early pressure. IdrA may want to throw down an expansion right now. In response, he's getting up his own Roach Warren. As we see, these Roaches are taking the front of this ramp with the Zerglings behind. Again, the Zerglings are very low HP. They are susceptible to those Banelings. We do have speed finished for IdrA, but just great Roach positioning for Rigid, shutting down this ramp completely. Now it'll be interesting to see which direction both these players choose to go. Looks like we have a fast lair coming from Rigid right now. IdrA just macroing up a little bit. Looks like he's trying to drone up. He's now at 20 drones compared to the 18 of Rigid. Neither player's taking an expansion. They both have Overlords well placed. They're going to be able to know exactly what the other person is doing. No anti-air on the field besides the Queens right now. So both players just playing off one base. Rigid is going for this lair though. IdrA just droning up more and more. Looks like IdrA finally pushing out some Roaches here, and now going for a lair of his own. So it feels like Rigid is actually a little bit of ahead right now. He is getting up an evolution chamber as well, so he can start on those upgrades. He does have superior Roach numbers. If you look at the APM, both players 212 to 167. Rigid actually ahead. So the adrenaline must be pumping after that first game loss, and he is trying to best IdrA, one of the best Zergs in the world. The lair has finished for Rigid, and he's getting that roach speed as well as the +1 upgrades and more roaches. IdrA just a little bit behind on the lair now. So we see these Zerglings are still babysitting this natural expansion of Rigid. Rigid may want to poke out and try to take down these Zerglings. They could be some free kills or at least lessen the pressure on his front door. If we look at the army tab, 850 to 850, and that's mostly in roaches, so pretty even numbers for both players, though IdrA does have a split army, does have these Zerglings down here. Let's see whether Rigid does choose to push out once this this glial reconstitution has finished. We see the speed coming for IdrA as well, and he's pushing out his own roaches. Both players just roaching up very hard here. IdrA has not yet gotten the evolution chamber though. Looks like we have a contaminate coming from the overseer of Rigid though. So this is actually the strategy which IdrA lost to in the GSL 2. His ZVZ opponent was continuing to contaminate his lair, and he was just not able to get the spawn larva off. So it put him behind in the number of larvae he had. So if anything, that's a good psychological move by Rigid, because that's got to make IdrA remember the GSL loss here. So we do see Rigid ahead in the army count. APM got a pretty good economy compared to IdrA's right now, 24 to 24. So I gotta feel like Rigid is just a little bit ahead, plus that psychological play with that overseer and the contaminate. Now gonna push out. IdrA does see this coming, so he's gonna have a superior, vastly superior concave. Look at this great concave, and Rigid does not want to move up there. Looks like Rigid is gonna take the opportunity to throw down this hatchery though. So if he can play contain with the with his forces out here and keep IdrA on one base, not really sure what IdrA is going to do with it. Right now he's just now moving the spine crawler and going to try to break out. We do see a changeling was thrown down by Rigid, so IdrA was able to snipe that off at the top of the ramp there very quickly. Both players very aware, and now Rigid going to pull back, set up this hatchery, and IdrA is going to do the same. So whereas IdrA in the second game of this first round series was a little bit of ahead of his opponent, Eisen, the entire time, we see Rigid a little bit of ahead of IdrA this entire game here. So just faster on the upgrades, more roaches, a faster second hatch, and we'll see whether IdrA is able to exploit maybe some miss micro by Rigid or something that's going to help him get back into this game. Again, both players pretty well set right now. It's not like Rigid is that far ahead, but just little things can add up over the course of a game. Good spread by Rigid here. He's got sight in all the important places, as does IdrA. IdrA may choose to, it looks like he's going to contaminate as well, so going to stop that extra larva production off of this second hatchery. So both players tit for tat doing the contaminates. Now this overseer is reminded he might try to come in for another contaminate, but very low, or he might try to take on this evolution chamber. If you can delay the upgrades from your opponent, it can be very powerful in these mirror army situations. Roach versus roach. So we see the +1 missile attack coming out for IdrA, the +2 for Rigid, as well as some infestors for Rigid as well. So very smart to add infestors to this roach play, especially in this ZVZ matchup. If you're able to use the fungal growth on the opponent roaches and make it so they can't